The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 201.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Bravehearty.
Change, my dear, and it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Physician healers.
Wearing a bit thin.
Fantastic.
Allons-y!
I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the second Doctor story called The Faceless Ones. And joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thank you. And Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Hello, hello. And folks, if you are not yet subscribed, please subscribe to the show in Apple Podcast or Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, everywhere. And even in your favorite podcast app, or you can even listen to us on the SQPN YouTube channel, where you should hit the bell to get notifications. So we are talking about The Faceless Ones, a second Doctor story. And you may be wondering, you guys usually go in a particular order through all the Doctors, and you just did a second Doctor story not that long ago. Why are you doing The Faceless Ones now? Well,
not just did we do a second Doctor story, we did the second Doctor story that follows this one.
Out of order.
A couple of weeks ago.
Right. That's right. That's because The Faceless Ones was another one of those lost stories from the early days of Doctor Who that had the original video or films, or the reels had been lost, or most of it, and I think only episodes 1 and 3 were in the BBC archives. And it's been remade into an animation. So they've used the various audio tracks and the telesnaps, and we've talked about this before, to make an animation out of it. And that was released in the UK in March of 2020, and it's just been released in the US. So we said, well, instead of waiting to come back to this and do it again, let's do it now. And so you have the opportunity, if you have not yet watched The Faceless Ones, that you can get it off of Amazon or wherever you get your Blu-rays or DVDs from, and you can watch that now. So we're going to be talking about The Faceless Ones and the animated version that's available.
Now, this is one that I had seen before, because I'd watched the surviving 2 episodes and then fan reconstructions of the others. So this was my second experience of the story. In the new animation, it is available on the DVD and Blu-ray, both in color and in black and white.
Right.
But I watched the black and white, so I didn't see the color, but I was actually quite impressed with the black and white. The animation was really good. They have been improving the animation,
Yes.
I think, over the number of these that they've done, and I thought the animation was really impressive at points.
I think so.
I agree. It looked really good, because that was one of my complaints when Power of the Daleks came out, which was the first second Doctor episode, of course, but also the first second Doctor episode that they animated, when they really started this push to bring these out in animation form. And I thought the animation was kind of clunky. This one does not suffer from that at all. I mean, I thought it was much, much better. Looked really good. There was almost points where it's like, is this really animated? There was a couple of the scenes, like the planes taking off, and it's like, was that animated, or was that, something live action?
And I like the reimagining. Like, obviously they didn't use exactly what they did in the originals with, say, the makeup or the aliens or various equipment or things like that. And they reimagined it. Basically, what could we do now, if we were to imagine this? So I like that aspect of it too. So that it really, like we did with the Macra Terror, where the Macras were much scarier, much more interesting than the paper mache things that they had in the 60s for the original.
I'll be interesting to hear from Jimmy what the difference is, like with the space station, when they're going up into their satellite, where the plane flies up and flies in. I'd be interested to hear kind of what the difference is there, because obviously back at the time they did it in the 60s, the original, it would have been very much, clunky and, models. And of course, this is animated, so they can make that plane do whatever they want.
My memory of that is I think they did have the wings folding effect where the plane's wings fold back so it looks like more of a rocket. But in terms of it landing in the space station, I don't recall that. Either it wasn't captured on the telesnaps or they may have kind of glossed over that precisely because of how difficult it would be doing a plane landing in a space station hangar at the time.
Just had the model on a string and basically just slid the string up until it went into the portal, and that was the end of it, basically.
Yeah,
kind
that
of thing.
could probably be,
Something as simple as that,
Yeah.
Right.
Now we've mentioned that this involves airplanes, and that's because it's set at an airport at Gatwick.
Yep.
Yes.
And so what I really want to know is, what does Captain Jeff think about all the airport and airplane realism or non-realism in this?
Yeah.
That's vital perspective we need.
Yeah, Captain Jeff of the Airplane Pilot Guy podcast, who's a friend of the SQPN network and of the podcast. I'd love to hear his take, like to get a take from somebody who is in aviation today and looking back at the way things were. Frankly, Sean McCartney, also a friend of the network, who is an air traffic controller in the UK. I'd love to get his take on this episode too. That would be really cool.
It would be interesting to hear, first of all, was this how air traffic control was back then versus now? Or I was impressed at one point they showed the map of the airport, and it appeared to be the actual aviation chart of the airport, in the animation. So I mean, there are things like little details like that I think they could do with the animation that maybe they didn't originally.
Probably.
Speaking of little details in the animation, if you watch carefully, there are some wanted posters that are in the background that are very interesting.
Yep.
Early on, as we go past the wanted posters, one of them is for Roger Delgado's master.
Yep.
Yes.
And another is for Sasha Dewan's master.
That's what I thought. I wasn't sure.
Oh, yeah. But then, so apparently there's two masters running around in 1966. But then if you, later, like in episode 6 or something, when we go past the wanted posters again, the one for Roger Delgado's master is still there, but Sasha Dewan's master has been replaced by somebody else. So apparently he's got caught.
It's the meddling monk.
Oh, maybe.
I went in pictures. It looked like the meddling monk.
Oh.
There were a lot of little Easter eggs. Yeah.
Well, and then next to the bottom water poster was an advertisement for Waterfield Antiques.
Oh, which is from The Evil of the Daleks. Well, and
there was also a sign advertising Magpie Electricals.
I was going to mention that. Yeah, that's another one. There's undoubtedly other ones I missed, but yeah, I love the fact that they put in these little Easter eggs, these little things for the fans to catch. I really enjoy that.
And watch too in the airport when they're showing inside the terminal all the different airline names, because some of them are like,
there was a United,
kind of a classic American Airlines, and United and Southwest, like the original Southwest logo, which is kind of anachronistic because Southwest didn't exist at that point. But still, it's just lots of different, and has never flown over to England either. Yeah, but there's lots of little details kind of along throughout. Yeah. It's pretty impressive what they've done.
So the story itself, we should mention that one of the things that makes it significant is the last story featuring Ben and Polly, who are holdovers from the first Doctor's time. They were the first Doctor's last companions, and this is their last adventure with the Doctor. And in fact, they there's a large section of this story where they're not in it at all. They're catatonic in a cabinet somewhere.
They were like car. first and second episodes, and then the 6th episode.
Yeah, so I think it was the transition for them, because this is their time, 1966. This is where the Doctor picked them up, and we'll talk about that as we get to the end of it. But this is really a Jamie and the Doctor story, and it starts with the TARDIS landing on a runway at Gatwick in 1966. Yeah. Jamie, of course, who as a 18th century Scotsman, is scared of the giant flying beastie, which was a lot of fun. And they're chased by a policeman because they've had to wave off planes for this police box and on the runway. And the TARDIS ends up getting hauled away by a flatbed truck with the name Leatherman on it, which is also we saw in The Evil of the Daleks. So the Evil of the Daleks starts with the TARDIS being hauled away on a flatbed truck at Gatwick and being chased by Jamie and the Doctor. So these two stories flow one right into the other. The crew of the TARDIS, the Doctor and companions, kind of get split up right at the beginning. Ben's over in one place. The Doctor, Jamie are hiding somewhere else. Polly is hiding.
It's because they're running from the police who are trying to catch them. So they split up.
And Polly ends up in a building labeled Chameleon Tours. A little foreshadowing there in the name, Chameleon. Like, I love when the bad guys use this really obvious name to describe themselves. Like, hey, we're the bad guys. We're using a clever name for it. This is what we're doing. But she sees two men quarreling over an envelope, and one shoots the other with a ray gun. Obviously not a regular gun of the time.
And apparently it's basically a mega taser because the Doctor later tells us the man has been electrocuted.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The man who does the shooting, he has the Chameleon Tours building has a hidden room. He calls someone about some postcards that were discovered, and then he chases Polly out of the hangar. So he sees that she's been there. She finds the Doctor, tells him what she saw, and he wants to go see where it happened, I guess. Meanwhile, the guy who was shot turns out to have been a detective inspector, so a policeman, and they say something about they think parents might have sent him, so that's interesting. The Doctor and Polly discuss how the man was killed. Like you said, it turns out he was electrocuted. The chameleon guy in charge, his name is Blade, so I'll call him Blade from now on.
Captain Blade.
Yes, right. These two guys are pilots. So Captain Blade and the other guy who did the shooting, his name is Spencer. They talk about how the Doctor knows more than he should about the ray gun and other things. So they get a sense that he's not just another Earth human. They think that Polly should be killed because she can identify Spencer. The Doctor is really intent on reporting the murder to airport authorities. Like, it's really important to him that they get someone in authority to investigate.
Never mind, they're on the airport illegally anyways, and more likely to get arrested if they go. But he still wants to make sure he gets it done.
Right, and the obvious fact that somebody is using alien tech to do this murdering, which seems interesting. That like in our current day, the 12th, 11th, 13th Doctor, they wouldn't bother going to get the police to report a murder. This would be they would handle it.
Even the Fourth Doctor in Pyramids of Mars was like, "Oh, this is beyond the police."
Right.
But here, the Doctor is young. He's only 450 years old at this time, so he's still trying to work within the system.
That's right. He still get that idealism of youth in him. So at 450. So as they go, Polly, for some reason, is walking behind the Doctor and Jamie, and Spencer manages to ambush her and knock her out without the Doctor and Jamie noticing. Good job there, guys. Keeping watch over poor Polly.
You got to stay up with the group, Yep.
Exactly. Don't get left behind. Polly gets interrogated by Captain Blade. I have to say, and this may be an effect of the animation or limitation, she seemed unusually calm for having been knocked out, abducted, and interrogated by murderers. She doesn't seem to realize how much danger she's in.
When you're traveling with the Doctor this long, I mean, it's just this. Oh, it's another Monday. We're getting interrogated again. I've been hijacked again.
And there's a reason that Ben calls her Duchess. I mean, she has that upper crusty unflappability.
Right. It'll be interesting. For a lot of these companions, I have not seen where they enter into the Doctor's orbit, so I'm kind of curious to see how Ben and Polly show up. Those stories. But when the Doctor I also noticed that when the Doctor and Jamie notice she's gone and they come back to find her, they give up looking for her pretty quickly. I found that was very interesting. She's not here. Oh well, we better get to the authorities. They get stopped at passport control where. Another one of these unflappable bureaucrats. He's uninterested in their report of a dead body because they don't have passports. That's the only thing that matters. Unless you produce a passport, I'm not listening to you about the murder or a dead body. And so, of course, they don't have passports, so they get detained. They're apparently on the other side of the international, the international line there, where you have to have passports.
This sets up an interesting dynamic that varies a little bit from what we often see in Doctor Who, where he shows up and there'll be something like he doesn't fit in, like he doesn't have a passport, and
Yep.
he will be at odds with the local officials. And
Yes.
usually there will be one holdout who's just like always opposed to the doctor no matter what, and who often is in league with the villains, but sometimes is just an idiot.
Yeah.
And here we seem to be starting out with that dynamic where the doctor is running afoul of local officials because of who he is. But by episode 6, all the humans are on the doctor's side.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even the commandant of the airport, who initially is the one that's least inclined to give him the time of day, even the commandant is like solidly on board and functioning as an actual active ally doing stuff to help the doctor.
Right. In a more modern script, they would have someone who's continuing to undermine the doctor out of ignorance and stupidity or something. You know
Well,
what I mean? Or just obstreperousness.
Or how many science-based episodes have we had where you've got that scientist who's just, he goes off the deep end because he's so caught up in his particular theory or project or
Right.
study or whatever. And so the whole episode, he's actually a foil to the doctor trying to solve the problem because he's so caught up in his world.
Arrogance. Yeah.
Arrogance,
That's
yeah.
true. I like that Jamie keeps sort of blurting out the truth, like about ray guns and the TARDIS, and think people disappearing. And the doctor at one point like stomps on his foot, like shush, don't talk about the TARDIS, which I thought was pretty funny. Meanwhile, we see Captain Blade back at Chameleon Tours filling out postcards from Paris, maybe like pre-filling them out from people, and they're pre-stamped, which is seems interesting. And then he we're shown this bandaged person in a cabinet or closet in their office that he injects.
It's our first faceless one.
Yes, he's one of the aliens. The doctor manages to get the commandant of the airport to go to the Chameleon Tours office because, I mean, if someone reports a dead body, you got to at least go look. Or otherwise, if you're skeptical, don't go. And it turns out there was one, you're in big trouble. So they
You'll
do go.
have even more forms to fill out.
Exactly.
Captain Blade comes out, shows them there's no dead body. Of course, like after all this time, why would there be? And after the commandant and a policeman haul off Jamie and the doctor, they're detained now. They're going to be arrested. Blade and Spencer escort this bandaged figure that's wrapped up in, it looks sort of like a mummy, but it also has pilot's gear on, like a hat and a coat, sort of as a disguise. I can't imagine it would be a great one. And they say something along.
Kind of think of the stereotypical Invisible Man type setup where he's got the coat and the bandages and everything, but you can't see any details.
Yeah.
And it would be better to hustle an apparent airplane captain with face bandages into an airport than hustling a mummy into an airport.
Well, that's right. So it's at least a little better. They'd say something along the lines of, we need to get him there quickly because he's reaching suffocation point. Then, and they eventually bring him to the airport medical center. Meanwhile, back at passport control, Polly shows up carrying a passport and claims not to know the doctor and Jamie, and says her name isn't Polly, but that she's
Michelle from Zurich.
At this point, I'm like, she has an impeccable British accent and speaks English perfectly for someone who's she claims never been to England, and then they actually
they call her on that.
Yeah.
How come you speak English so great? Oh, I had an English nanny.
Yes. Well, that explains everything. It must be why you have perfect English. but at least they noticed the part that would be a problem and wrote a lot of dialogue to cover it, even if it's not very believable.
Yeah, her it's interesting. Her nanny must have been from the upper class. You don't find a lot of upper class British women working as nannies.
Yes, that's true. It's Mary Poppins. So back in the medical center, the faceless one is put on a bed next to another guy. He looks disfigured. His face is all like the animation. This is really kind of creepy. And on another bed is another guy who we'd seen before in air traffic control. Yep. And a nurse comes in. They strap devices on them. The guy from air traffic control, his name is Meadows.
Yeah.
And after turning on these devices, Meadows' face appears on the alien, and he has all of Meadows' memories and everything.
Right.
So they're body snatchers.
It's kind of interesting that these controller units that they put on each one, their left arms, both left arm of the original and the drone or the copy, they look exactly like Wiimotes.
I noticed
Exactly
that.
like Nintendo Wiimotes.
It's very interesting.
About the same size too, give or take.
Yeah.
What struck me is how similar this is to the Zygons, because the Zygons will take your appearance and have your memories, and they need to keep you around in suspended animation. They can't just kill you. And if you mess with the original person, it interferes with the Zygon that's copying you. And as we're going to see, that's exactly what happens with the chameleons, as they come to be called.
It's a little more permanent for the chameleons, but it's the same basic idea that if the original dies or is woken up out of, or at least have that controller pulled off, it causes problems.
Yeah. In this case, they actually do a Wicked Witch of the West. If you free the original human, they just melt into a puddle.
Right. Yep. Although at one point there's a little bit of dialogue about how after a while the change becomes permanent and they don't need the original. Like they've sucked all the life out of the original.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
There is a nice little line here where the Doctor and Jamie need to escape from being arrested, and the Doctor says, "Jamie, when I say run, we run," and it's like, which is a great line because in fact, I think I haven't listened a lot. Did I include that in our opening? I have to go back and re-listen.
There is a version of that in our opening, not this exact one, but yeah.
Yeah,
because the second Doctor says that a lot.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
It's catchphrase.
Yes.
I like how there are some nice sight gags, one of which, and I wonder about, were these in the originals? Because like after Jamie and the Doctor are on the run, they're trying to blend in, and so they're like reading newspapers, which is a classic trope. You read a newspaper so people can't see your face. And Jamie is holding his upside down.
Right.
And they don't make anything out of that. You just notice it. There's also a great bit because Ben is soon reunited with them and catches them up on what's been happening with him, and he takes them to his hiding place.
Yes.
Where he's been hiding, and it's a photo booth.
Yep.
The kind of automated photo booth where you get in, you put in a coin, and you get 4 pictures of yourself. And so all 3 of them are crammed into the photo booth. And at one point, a woman comes up and opens the curtain so she can use the photo booth. And all 3, Jamie, Ben, and the Doctor, put on these ridiculous, silly grins as if they're waiting to have their picture taken.
Yeah.
And then the woman moves off and they resume normal conversation.
Although, I have to say, how does Jamie know what to do? But okay, I'll give him that.
It's worth it for the laugh.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're a younger viewer or listener, you might not even know what a photo booth is. I'm not sure they have those anymore, but yeah.
Well, you can find them, and sometimes you'll find them at like parties and stuff like that, where you can get kits where basically it uses a digital camera and a digital printer, but it does the same effect, and it can do the different, like the different effects of the film and everything with them. So you can actually see them. They're still available today, but not like the classic photo booth that you go to the mall and you plunk a quarter in and you get 4
a
pictures.
strip of photos. Yeah,
I've seen them and in the mall within the last 20 years.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
So they eventually, at this point, is when they figure out that Chameleon Tours is advertising budget trips for young people 18 to 25. And that the young people are getting on these planes, going to their destinations, sending a postcard home, and disappearing, never being heard from again. And there's something going on. And Chameleon isn't just based in the UK. There's flights coming from all over. I think basically Europe. I think is what it is.
A place like Zurich and Rome and Spain.
Dubrovnik.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's the scene where Jamie finds out how much it is. It's like a whole 27 pounds. He's like, I've never seen that much money in my life.
It's a fortune. And it would have been to 28, and it would have been a fortune back in the 1700s.
Yes, it would have been. So the duplicate Paulie, because that's what she is working for Chameleon Tours at their kiosk. And let's see how the Doctor confronts her. He gets her to slip up and admit she knew someone had been shot and murdered, even though he hadn't said it. So he knows something's up. Then they decide another detective inspector shows up looking for the first one, says he's investigating Chameleon, so he's going to be important. So the doctor and others split up. Ben's going to go to the chameleon hangar. The doctor's going to try to convince the authorities there's been a murder, and Jamie's going to stay and keep an eye on Polly. So that's
Now, the new inspector's name is Crossland, and he's played by I forget his name, but I think he's a fairly well-known British actor at the day. But he is an interesting character because he's the first person that really takes the doctor seriously.
yeah.
He comes across as very likable. The actor is attempting to pull off a Scottish accent, and it doesn't quite work.
Pretty mild. Pretty mild.
So that's interesting to see. You know, normally we complain about how when American accents don't work from British actors on this show, but here
Right.
it's a Scottish accent that's not quite there.
See, I didn't even notice that it was trying to be a Scottish accent. I did not. Of course, you got Fraser Hines there, who's chewing up the scenery with his big Scottish accent. So
Yeah.
But I've read in the Doctor Who books I read, I've read other accounts of this episode, and it's been pointed out that part of what the actors is doing here in playing Crossland is he's trying to come across as very likable and human, and he's got this different speech pattern, and it's setting us up for very late in the game he's going to be replaced by a faceless one. And all of these mannerisms he's building up now drop away.
Yeah.
So he's not friendly and helpful anymore. He's not speaking with a Scottish accent anymore. He's using received pronunciation, and he's not like waving his pipe around and things like that. He's just all of those humanizing elements go away when the alien is replacing him.
Right.
So the actor is Bernard Kay, who was also in Colony in Space as Caldwell.
Yeah,
So
I believe he's in a third one too.
he's in several. He's in the Dalek Invasion of Earth as Carl Tyler, which another one we saw recently. He's in The Crusade as Saladin, and then these other two. So he's done a few things. I'm trying to see if what he looked like in. Oh, he looked very differently in Dalek Invasion of Earth. That's why I didn't recognize him there. Okay, so he didn't have the mustache. So then we have at this point the introduction of Samantha. She shows up at the chameleon kiosk, looking for her missing brother.
Which, by the way, speaking of actors and actresses, this is one that we've seen before, but much later in time. Her name's Pauline Collins, is the actress. She played Queen Victoria in Tooth and Claw.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so she's another connection between classic Who and new Who.
Yeah. Here, though, she's not using an upper crust accent. She's using a Liverpudlian accent.
Yes.
And so it's interesting to have her contrasting with Jamie. And her character is very interesting in this serial.
Yes.
She is very determined to find out what happened to her brother. She has the unstoppability that you need in a good companion.
Right.
And I wonder, because we have been in polyexiting, I wonder if they were thinking about introducing Sam or Samantha as the new companion alongside Jamie.
Apparently they were.
It feels like that.
We've seen that before. We talked about a Seventh Doctor episode, the one where they're at the seashore, where there was a woman that we thought might be
Ray.
Yeah, trying out for a companion, and then eventually chose Ace instead.
Right.
Yeah, so we've seen them do this before, where they'll bring them on for a serial, and I suppose somewhere in the middle of the serial they decide whether or not to bring them on or not.
In fact, that's what happened to Jamie.
Yeah.
They in the Highlanders, Jamie was just a character who was there for that adventure, and then at the end of the serial, the producer comes up to him and says, "How would you like to be a companion?" And they had to reshoot the ending.
In this case, I think it was the opposite, which is they wrote the character to become a new companion, but the actress turned them down. She didn't want to go on and become a regular. So, but yeah, I think it's an interesting, especially given there's a little bit of a attraction between her and Jamie.
It's very definite. And that would have been very interesting. It would have been our first. I mean, we kind of have a little bit of a romance between Ian and Barbara, and kind of a little bit of a romance between Ben and Polly, but nothing as explicit as what happens here, because Jamie, and by the way, Fraser Hines was a bit of a heartthrob at the time in England, but he flat out at one point kisses her
undercover.
Right. It's for tactical reasons, but he nevertheless kisses her. And then later, she kisses him back.
Yes.
And is clearly
Affection.
hoping to see him around in the future. So we would have had an explicit romance with kissing and everything, you
Yes.
know,
Wow.
if she had stayed.
That would have changed things a lot. Fraser Hines as heartthrob. There's a definite Davy Jones vibe going on with Fraser Hines. I don't know if like, there's a lot similar, Davy Jones from the Monkees. Anyway, so Samantha's brother is one of these young people who supposedly went to Rome. The hotel he was booked into doesn't exist, yet she has a postcard from him from Rome, and she's not going to give up until she finds him. The doctor, meanwhile, has shown up in the commandant's office, who refuses to listen, even when his secretary tries to tell him about the policeman and chameleon tours. Like, she's got information. He just refuses to listen. So the doctor then escapes being arrested by threatening to blow them up and tossing a soft rubber ball at them as if it's a bomb. Like, I have a bomb. I'm going to kill you. He throws it at him and runs out the door. Meanwhile, Ben is at the hangar and he finds a catatonic Polly in a packing case. Like, she's got her eyes open, just sitting there, but completely unresponsive. So that's really creepy. And the doctor has returned to the abandoned chameleon kiosk where he turns on a monitor and he sees Ben in the hangar getting immobilized by one of the aliens. So he knows Ben is now in trouble. So there's a little bit more, I think, of Polly. We might see her one more time, but I think this is about where both of them, they're gone at this point until episode 6.
Yeah, they're like, there's no duplicate of Ben at all. He's knocked out and he's gone.
Yeah.
We also, by this point, have had a chance to watch the chameleons interacting among themselves a good bit as they're talking about their plans and what they're going to do to try to counter the doctor's efforts and so forth. And one of the things that struck me is they're remarkably calm and surprisingly non-sinister.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, they come across as calm. We don't have any shouting megalomaniacal, exterminate, Daleks are the supreme life forms. We
Yeah.
don't have anything like that. They actually do think they're the supreme life forms. Later on, we're going to hear about how they're the most intelligent life forms in the universe, and humans are only as intelligent as animals on their planet. But they don't say it in a way that is anything other than,
Matter of fact.
Matter of fact, yeah. And they aren't cackling villains. They don't even when they disagree with each other, they don't raise their voices. They're very businesslike, and they don't come across as zombies or creepy or part of the creepiness of them, not in any classic sense. Part of the creepiness of them is how normal they seem, just people.
Even. They're kind of person you would describe as even keel. Even when, they're a little excited, it's still very, calm,
Right. Even when later on Meadows is, trying to escape from being discovered, it's still relatively calm. It's kind of interesting. The duplicate Meadows. So the doctor is, first I want to say that Jamie and Samantha at the chameleon booth, they see I guess it's just, she's a stewardess. They still call them stewardess, so I'm not being politically incorrect. That's what she was. Telling a group of young people about to get on a plane to pre-write your postcards and we'll mail them from Zurich for you, so that you're I love this idea that they're kind of like, just so your parents won't worry, but because you'll obviously forget because you'll be too busy partying, we'll mail the postcards for you just to allay your parents' fears. It's so like undermining parental authority sort of thing.
Well, and they're college students, so they're sitting there going, yeah, that makes absolute sense, because as soon as we land, we're going to go get drunk.
Something like that. Although I have to point out a little flaw in the animation. The postcards, they did not create a new postcard from the one they'd shown us earlier from Paris. It's the Paris postcard, and on it says, "Paris is beautiful, visiting the Eiffel Tower today." Like, you're going to Zurich. That if you mail this from Zurich, your parents are going to know something's up. So anyway, they're stopped by the detective Crossland, because he's the one, he and the other detective who's dead were investigating the disappearances like Samantha's brother. So that's what we found out. The doctor, meanwhile, Chameleon, looks in the packing case in Chameleon's hangar and finds not Polly, but now he finds Meadows, the air traffic control guy, who's also catatonic. Then he hears a voice calling for help from another room. "I'm suffocating." So when the doctor goes into the office to investigate, he's locked in, and gas starts getting pumped in. And it appears that the room is getting very cold. He acts like it's getting cold.
Yeah. He puts, one of the first things he does is try to put his hand over the nozzle the gas is coming out of, and then he pulls it back like it's been hurt by cold or something.
Frozen, yeah.
Right.
He also, by this point, has picked up, it turns out the chameleons have two weapons they use to immobilize people.
Yes.
One is the super taser that electrocutes you, but the other is a kind of, it looks kind of like a pen, you know, like a writing pen, but it's not. And it's a little rod, and it emits gas and stuns people, and also, we'll learn later, freezes things. So I think it's the same gas that that they use on the doctor here, and he's got it in his pocket.
I was unsure whether it was gas or like rays. The animation wasn't clear on that, but that makes sense, the gas. So the doctor manages to stop up the pipes pumping gas in, and covers the camera lens with his coat, which gets Spencer to come out of the secret room to find out, is the doctor immobilized? And that's when the doctor manages to shoot him with his own immobilizer pen thingy and escape. I like the fact that they have the doctor's about to run out, and then he stops. Oh, wait, comes back, grabs his coat off of the camera that he used to and goes. I like that little detail. So that's when the doctor gets back to Chameleon's kiosk and connects with Detective Crossland. So we have our key investigative team now. Oh, there's a line here when Blade finds Spencer unconscious. He says to him, "The doctor's body, where is it?" Because they were trying to, kill the doctor. And Spencer says he escaped. His intelligence is far above normal beings. And Blade says, "Above yours, perhaps." Which wow, nice burn. So the doctor has told Jamie to stay and watch the kiosk, okay? But Samantha, after the doc leaves, convinces him to go check out the chameleon hangar with her. Bad idea. Always do what the doctor asks, right?
Yeah.
Well, always/never.
Oh, yes, right. Except when you shouldn't.
I was going to say, by this time, the doctor should know, I'm going to ask the companion to do something, and he won't. But he's still kind of naive, because he's only in his second regeneration. So.
He's still young and naive. So the doctor and Crossland are going to talk to the commandant again, because the doctor hasn't smashed his head against that wall enough. So he's going to go back. At the air traffic control tower, the commandant finally believes the doctor.
He's got the freezy gas pen now.
Yes,
and that's clearly this is not normal 1966 technology.
Right, and that must convince him of all of the things. The doctor also noticed that Meadows is there in the tower. He tries to convince them that it's an alien plot to kidnap young people, and he uses the immobilizer pen on Meadows to prove it. And then Jamie and Samantha show up with more of the pre-filled out postcards that provide the evidence the doctor needed. Like, see, this is these postcards are already filled out. They're taking these young people. And based on Crossland's say-so on his vouching for the doctor, the commandant gives the doctor a free hand in the airport for 12 hours, which is interesting that he doesn't need the 12 hours. Like, it really, in most stories, like especially today, we would go down to the last second. You've got 5 minutes to find the aliens, sort of thing. We don't really get a whole lot of like ticking clock here.
Yeah, well, after that, the ticking clock, as soon as they set it up, the ticking clock basically vanishes. Because by this point, the commandant has, even though he's only letting him have a quote unquote free hand to investigate, and only for a 12-hour period, that basically goes out the window immediately, because the evidence for something really bad happening mounts so fast at this point,
right?
That the director, the commandant, without even the viewer necessarily noticing it, does a complete 180 and gets on the doctor's side and is actively helping the doctor implement complex plans to deceive the chameleons and save everybody. And
he's on board. Yeah.
He's an active part of this. He's not just supportive. He's helping execute the doctor's deceptive plans to save everybody.
Right. It's kind of refreshing that we don't have him dragging his feet, though. I think we kind of mentioned that before, but it's not like we otherwise that would really slow down the story. Otherwise, this way it keeps it going.
For this being a six-parter, it's remarkably not painful.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
it's a little, it has a in viewing it in my notes, it has a relaxed pace,
Yes.
but it's not unpleasantly slow. A lot of, in a lot of the six-parters, to pad the running time, we have lots of running through corridors.
Mhm.
Yep.
And there is some running early on, like in episode 1, but after that, we don't have so much running, and they're not trying to pad it with action, and it does have a kind of relaxed pace,
Yeah.
but it feels okay. It doesn't feel like I wasn't getting bored by it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of locations that they go to. They're in the terminal, they're in the air traffic control tower, they're in the air traffic control building. I don't know if it's a tower,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
in the hangar, of course, in the planes later, and in the space station.
Right.
There's a lot of moving around. But yeah, it's not running.
But it makes sense in what they're
Yes.
doing. It's not action. It's kind of like in Evil of the Daleks, the story
Yep.
that follows this, that preceded this for us because wibbly wobbly. They had 3 major locations in that. They had 1966, they had the 1800s, and they had Skaro. And
Right.
so even though that was a six-parter, the location changes and the logic of the location changes made it feel like we're not just randomly adding padding here.
Right.
Exactly. We've been kind of spoiled, though, by having so many 4-parters that we've looked at recently
Yeah.
that now we hit something that's a little bit longer, and it does kind of stretch a bit.
Yeah, there are a couple places where like the police are searching, and
Right.
and so there's lots of that, of them searching in different places without much dialogue or action. But you're right, it's not frenetic, but neither is it just like long, boring stretches. It's well paced. It is well paced. Spencer and Meadows, meanwhile, plot to kill the doctor. Meadows is going to place a device on him, a little button thing that Spencer will activate remotely, and so that will come into play in a bit. Crossland, meanwhile, goes out to the Chameleon airplane to investigate and is taken prisoner by Blade. So he's on the plane as it takes off. And it turns out he's taken to the flight deck. The flight deck is obviously not a regular airplane cockpit. And they talk about using Crossland.
Well, not
for
a
the director.
1966 one, although they do have like a bank vault type door they use to seal off the passenger compartments.
Well,
we
it's-
have those now post 9/11.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true.
But it's also twice the size of your average cockpit that you'll see even today. I mean,
Right.
I think Captain Jeff and company would love to have cockpits that spacious.
All the gauges are in English, including on the alien spaceship, by the way. They have like
Yeah.
the same voltage and things like
And
that.
they came from Radio Shack. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
or Magpie Electrical.
Which shows up.
They do talk about using Crossland for the director. So the director is going to get a body, Crossland's face. Jamie and the doctor finally break into the secret room in the Chameleon hangar and find a cabinet, that cabinet that the wrapped up Faceless One was in, for someone not used to Earth's atmosphere. And then they turn on a monitor that shows them the medical center. So now they know the next place they have to go. At this point, Spencer activates the killing device that's on the doctor's back, but it doesn't kill him. And Jamie's able to take it off and destroy it. But the doctor is knocked out at this point.
It like shocks him or something.
Mhm.
The Faceless Ones are really into like electricity as a weapon. And then on the plane, Blade and the stewardess show Crossland a video monitor of the secret of Chameleon tours, as we see all the passengers in their seats as the plane flies, and suddenly they've disappeared somewhere.
Yeah, and it's misleading. It looks like they teleported,
Right.
but
Right.
but later you find out they weren't teleported. They were tissue compression eliminated and shrunk.
They were, although not killed in this case. The
Not
master's
killed in this
technology is
case.
worse. And it's from something they ate, right?
Part of the process involves
Yeah.
eating something.
The,
Yes.
the food starts the process, but then there's equipment in the plane that completes the miniaturization. As we find out from Jamie when he gets on the plane and gets sick before the food comes out.
Jamie air sickness.
I love that. Makes perfect sense. He's never flown before, and so
But on an airplane,
it-
he's flown in the TARDIS, just
Well,
not on an airplane.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And so he gets airsick.
Yeah, the stewardess is offering everyone something called a barley sugar as a snack. This is apparently what contains it. What is a barley sugar? Do either of you know what that is?
It sounds like a barley pop without alcohol. I mean, no.
I mean, it sounds kind of weird, like barley sugar.
It's a candy. It's a hard candy.
It's a boiled, a hard candy. Interesting. I'm curious to what that would taste like. Old candies, whether they're American or British, can sometimes have very interesting tastes to modern taste buds. But now I have to find some.
There's also another thing we don't want to confuse it with called a barley water, which is a drink.
Yes.
And is also, it's non-alcoholic, but it's also barley based. And sometimes it is served with sugar, but it is not the same thing as a barley sugar.
Right. So on the plane, everyone's disappeared. And so that brings us to episode 4 of this. So at this point, the doctor is still immobilized on the floor, having been knocked out by the device. And Spencer pulls the gun on Jamie. They struggle. And Samantha and Jamie are now knocked out. So the doctor, Jamie, and Samantha are all out. And they're Spencer sets up an elaborate James Bond villain laser.
My immediate thought was golden.
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Because of course it's 1966. What else is the villain going to do?
Right.
He's going to set up a slow laser at a weird angle that won't actually kill more than one of them and then leave.
Well, and of course you got to have the little bit of debris, leaves or whatever on the floor there in front of the laser. And as the laser goes along, all of a sudden, poof, it bursts into flames.
I love that. So that it gives him just enough time to wake up and to get free in order to escape. So that's good. Good job, Spencer.
And the way they do it is nice. It turns out the doctor has the idea. They all three participate.
Yes.
The doctor has the idea of how to escape. He asks Sam if she's got a mirror in her purse.
Yes.
And she does. And then Jamie is able to take the mirror and deflect the laser light back onto the laser, thus causing it to, explode. Yes. And so nice execution with all three involved.
Right. Yeah, it's like they're paralyzed, but they're slowly coming out of it, so they can barely move to do these things. So yeah, Spencer should have just shot them with the ray gun, but then we wouldn't have the doctor. So meanwhile, in the medical center, Jenkins, the officious bureaucrat from immigration, is being duped and replaced. Because that's what we need is duplicates of officious TSA bureaucrats, which is essentially what he is. And they go to the doctor and Jamie go to the aid center where they pretend Jamie's sick, but they can't get past Nurse Ratched. And Spencer's watching them on a monitor. And he says that doctor is a menace to our plans. And Jenkins says, then we must kill him. And I said to myself at this point, maybe someone competent should try to kill the doctor instead of Spencer.
In order to figure out what's going on, they need to get into the first aid station and they need to get past Nurse Ratched. The question is, how are they going to do that? And the way they do it is by enlisting the help of the secretary of the commandant.
Yes.
The secretary's name is Jean Rock. And I wanted to comment on Jean Rock, the secretary, because she is awesome.
Jean rocks.
Yeah, no kidding.
She is like awesome self-initiative, self-determination action secretary because she is, even though the commandant has been dragging his feet, she's been doing little things all this time to show agency, like making phone calls and asking questions. And she, on her own initiative, without being told to, and she comes in at this point and says that she has discovered, she's been calling the airports that Chameleon Tours flies to, and she's discovered none of the flights ever arrive.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I love the commandant's reaction. It's not, oh, whatever happened to these planes? It's, boy, that's kind of expensive, isn't it?
Long distance calls?
Long distance calls.
But she does that. And now, so the doctor makes her an active part of the plan and says, look, can you fake being sick so that Nurse Ratched will come here and we can get into the first aid station?
Yes.
And so Jean faints and, pretends to faint in order to get the nurse out of the first aid station so they can all get in. And this is not the last great thing that Jean, the action secretary, is going to do either. So I just love her. She's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. And Samantha, meanwhile, has booked a ticket to Rome on a next Chameleon flight. And Jamie, to save her, because Jamie, is a classic.
He's being gallant.
Yep. He kisses her. This is where he does where he kisses her to distract her, so he can steal her ticket from her. I love that back in the day, how much more lax security was, about things. There was no way today you could get on a flight with someone else's ticket. It's just not going to happen. But, back then, I've got a ticket like I'm getting on the train to London from here. I'm getting on the plane. Now, the Commandant, I like this. The Commandant has arranged for an RAF fighter to tail the next chameleon flight. Because once when a plane leaves air traffic control space, it's sort of on its own. It's not being, even today, they're not actively tracked, like with radar. So they want to find out if they're not going to their destinations, where are these planes going? And this is when Jean feigns her illness to go to the medical center. The doctor finds some of the devices, the ones that are strapped to the wrists, and he sneaks out before Jenkins can show up and shoot him. That's where the shooting. So he's no more competent than Spencer is at killing the doctor. Nobody's really that competent at killing the doctor. Let's be honest.
No.
Then
it's only happened 12 times.
Yes.
Yeah. At least.
A few more times than that. Samantha can't find her ticket that Jimmy took, so she goes back to the kiosk and she's taken prisoner by Spencer. And then Jamie, we see him on board the chameleon flight, which is taking off.
This is when he gets airsick.
And there's this bit of dialogue between the doctor and the Commandant that I like. The Commandant is, well, this time they'll have the RAF on their tail. And the doctor's like, oh, how high can fighters go these days? Because the doctor's saying it's going into orbit, and the Commandant is having none of that. How high can the fighters go these days, Commandant? Oh, 10 miles plus. The doctor, oh, how futile. Which I just love that delivery. It's like he's saying, oh, how great that is. But he's like, oh, how futile that will be.
Well, it's kind of funny too. Is they say miles instead of feet. We would say, well, how high can the fighter go? Oh, about 60,000 feet.
Yes.
I say 10 miles. So you got to do math. How high is that really?
So on the airplane, Jamie's air sickness saves him. He has to run for the bathroom as they're in the air. And this time we see the passengers don't disappear. We see them shrink out of view of the camera, which is interesting. Again, I would have loved to have seen the original of this, how they accomplished that effect.
I'm pretty sure it would have been, because there's no way they're going to shrink, 15 people that are in shot at the time. It would have been a fade, and then there would maybe be a little doll in the seat or something.
Or
Or
could they have done something like whoever was the seatmate with Jamie is the only one they showed do it, or something like that.
Right. Something like that.
That would have been a little easier.
So meanwhile, Blade on the flight deck sees the RAF fighter following them and shoots it with a version of the electric ray gun, immobilizing the pilot, and that plane crashes.
Well, electrocuting the pilot.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry, electric. Yeah. And that plane crashes, and then on the radar, the chameleon plane appears to stand still, and so that causes the Commandant to say, well, when a plane looks like it's standing still on radar, it means it's plummeting to the earth, like it's going straight down.
Right.
And the doctor says, or it could be going straight up. And that's what we see. This is the shot where we see it. The wings fold in like an F-14 Tomcat, the swing wing. It fold in, and then it's going into the space, and we see it rendezvous with a giant conical spaceship. And it flies up inside it. So that's where episode 4 ends. Episode 5 begins with Jamie hiding on the plane. He's watching the aliens remove all these faceless ones remove all the personal effects of the passengers. The stewardess is like placing something in a box. We don't see it. It's the shrunken passengers, and she carries it off the plane and to this other room and places it in a cabinet. And this is when Jamie shows up and follows her in. And once she's gone, he looks in the cabinet and you see tiny people laid out in drawers and catatonic. And there's so many drawers, and we eventually find out that 50,000 young people have been disappeared in this manner, which, I'm sorry, but if 50,000 people have disappeared all on one airline, somebody would have noticed.
From London, nonetheless, or from the UK, nonetheless.
Well, I don't think it's that. I think it's from all their European operations.
Yes,
because they later talk about how we've been in contact with our other planes in these other countries.
Right.
So
Yes.
it's 50,000, but it's spread over Europe. But still, 50,000 people go missing in Europe, and it's going to get noticed. And admittedly, it is being noticed, but you'd think it would be at a more advanced stage than this.
Yeah. Yes. Meanwhile, the Commandant has ordered a search. They don't find the airliner. They find the crashed RAF plane.
Just like the Captain Mantell UFO incident from the 1950s.
That's right. Which is a future episode of the
Mysterious
Jimmy
World, sure.
Mysterious World, yes. That's on the list. The Doctor at this point detains the Meadows replacement, the duplicate, and finds one of the alien devices strapped to his arm.
And he tries to run, but then Jean, the action secretary, stops him with a chair.
Yes,
It's like
which is
slams a
incredible.
chair into him and knocks him over. Awesome. Go Jane.
Go
Or
Jean.
Jean.
So he gets interrogated and spills the beans like pretty quickly.
And this is the dumbest this is the dumbest villain motivation ever. Now that we finally know what the Faceless Ones are doing on their planet, where
Yes.
they, the most intelligent life forms in the universe, who surprisingly do not notice a lot of the suspicious behavior happening around them
Yes.
that could actually thwart their plans. I mean, they've zeroed in on the Doctor as a threat, but everyone else is just an animal, so they're not worried about what they do, no matter how suspicious.
Yes.
But on their home planet, there was an explosion that wiped out their identities. And so they decided to invent the most complex form of plastic surgery in the universe that would let them steal other people's identities. And it just and instead of just doing plastic surgery on yourselves.
This is what I wrote. I wrote that. Have they never heard of plastic surgery? I mean, at least in Star Trek Voyager with the Vidians, they came up with a plausible idea of stealing, healthy tissues and organs and stuff.
Yep.
This is like the dumbest motivation. You've traveled across the universe to steal people's faces? Like,
Maybe you should have just built a surgery clinic.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Or like you could have just like copied the image and gone back, like without having to suck the memories out of somebody. Like, anyway, it's really pretty dumb. We do find out also that if the device is removed from the duplicate or the original, something bad happens to the alien. And we like, as you mentioned before, they get all Wicked Witch of the West and turn into a puddle. What a world, what a world. But the process can be reversed by the machine in the medical center. And Meadows says the nurse is holding their originals, so the people they've duplicated, over their heads. Like they're being coerced to continue to go along with the plan. The aliens are, because they don't know where their originals are, and so they could potentially be liquefied if they don't obey.
I didn't get a sense. I got a sense that only the nurse knows where it is. I didn't pick up on this is being used to coerce them necessarily.
To keep them in line. That's what I was thinking is how it came across.
See, that's kind of the feeling I got too, was the idea of that they were kind of unwilling. Some of them were unwilling participants in this scheme, and that was their. Well, you want to be liquefied, otherwise do what we say.
Right. But the nurse has her own socked away somewhere for where she's got control of it. So as he says, she was cunning. She's got her own original with her. So that's going to be important.
Yeah.
So they get to the medical center. They detain the nurse. The doctor rescues Samantha, who was about to get duped.
Oh, and Samantha, and they then find the nurse's original that's also in the medical center. And Sam, seeing the two versions of the nurse, says, "Flippin' heck, but she's in there." And I'm like, wow, you could say flippin' heck on a 1960s children's program? Do you know what flipping heck means?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a euphemism.
Admittedly, I had to laugh at that line because there's a YouTuber, Techmoan, that I follow, and he's got puppets that will say flippin' heck all the time.
So the doctor, the duplicate nurse, meanwhile, is being detained, but she gets the drop on the policeman holding her and kills him. But when she comes into the x-ray room, Meadows, the duplicate Meadows, turns off the device on the original nurse, Pinto, not really Ratchet, obviously, Nurse Pinto, and the alien Faceless One nurse turns to a puddle of goo. So she doesn't actually say "I'm melting," but that would have been great.
Oh, my beautiful wickedness.
Yeah.
This is where the doctor finally learns what's happened to Jamie. She tells him that Jamie took her ticket, and so he must be on the alien ship. And that's when we switch to Jamie. The detective inspector comes into the room where Jamie is strapped to a chair. I like the fact that when the detective inspector, when Crossland says that the people have been miniaturized, Jamie doesn't recognize the word miniaturize, of course. because there was no such word in 18th century Scotland, the Scottish language.
Not that you would apply to humans.
Right, right. And I mean, I'm sure maybe some academics or intellectuals would have had it, but it wasn't a word in regular use anyway. And then it turns out that it's not the detective, it's the director. Crossland has already been duped, and we learn that the last plane is about to depart to pick up the remaining aliens on Earth. So the plan has been finished. They're about to leave with the 50,000 young people.
Yeah, and Crossland is now, even though he's being sort of friendly to Jamie, I mean, he's not being menacing because you don't need to be menacing if you're the smartest life form in the universe.
Yes.
Right.
He's dropped the Scottish accent and the other human mannerisms, and it takes Jamie a minute to catch on to this is not the same guy I met before.
Yes, yes. So the doctor has to convince the commandant not to just arrest the remaining dupes, the remaining aliens, because he needs to sneak on board the last flight to rescue the 50,000 young people. And so he's going to pretend to be a dupe, a chameleon, and he gets the real Nurse Pinto to go along with him. And I got to say, Nurse Pinto, who's now shown up for the first time, she's another one of these heroic female characters in this episode, because she's on board. Like, her life's on the line here, but she's on board with helping out, which I give her credit for.
And everybody cares about those 50,000 young people that need to be rescued.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, there's a twist to how the doctor is going to pretend to be a dupe. He asks Meadows, do you ever change your face?
Yes.
And Meadows says, yes, sometimes chameleons are reprocessed. And so the cover story is the doctor is now going to impersonate the chameleon who is impersonating Meadows.
Right.
The idea will be that the doctor got suspicious of Meadows, and so Meadows had to replace him.
Right.
And so now the chameleon who was Meadows is now the doctor, is the story, but it's really secretly sneaky the doctor.
And now that the commandant is finally fully on board with the whole alien thing, he's got his airport personnel searching everywhere for where the stashed originals, the ones on Earth, have been stashed, because the doctor needs to use that as his bargaining chip. That's going to be important.
And we're going to see the commandant, like in radio contact with the aliens, lying to them to buy the doctor more time. So that's how on board he is. He's really active in this now.
Right. As the doctor and Nurse Pinto arrive on the alien ship, Captain Blade, has figured out that the doctor and the nurse are imposters, and Jamie has been duplicated, and his double now.
Jamie has received pronunciation accent now too.
Right.
Yep.
He no longer has a Scottish accent, and tells the director, now that he has Jamie's knowledge, that the doctor is a traveler in time and space and has more knowledge, so he needs to be captured. So he needs to be held for his knowledge. Blade says, by the way, at this point, that their medical center says the doctor and the nurse are not faceless ones. They're both human, which is interesting. At this stage in Doctor Who's timeline, we're still going with the doctor is mostly human, I guess, which is interesting.
He hasn't grown his second heart yet.
Well,
Yes.
he's half human on his mom's side.
That's right. That's right. Or not even Gallifreyan. Anyway, yeah. So he's the Timeless Child. At Gatwick, they're still racing to find the originals. Like you said,
the second doctor especially is a timeless child.
he is.
Yeah. Yes.
The commandant has diverted all aircraft. Incoming aircraft are diverted. We've shut down the airport. He makes a public address. All employees are assisting the search. In fact, by the way, when the Jamie doesn't have his accent, the doctor doesn't think much of the Jamie duplicate because of his lost Scottish accent. He actually calls that out. I do like that part.
Yeah. And he doesn't care about the duplicate Jamie either, because it's not the real Jamie.
Exactly.
He's just that man over there.
He starts to sow dissent among the Faceless Ones between the director and the others by pointing out that Crossland, the real Crossland, is on board, so the director is safe. But all the other dupes have the originals still on Earth, which makes them vulnerable. And he starts to bluff that the originals have been found. They're going to be deprocessed one by one.
And you're first, he tells Blade.
Yeah, right.
You're going to be the first to die.
This is where the Commandant contacts Chameleon, who demands to know where the originals were hidden so they can prove that they found them, but they can't say. But it's Samantha who figures out that the originals are in rented cars on the rented car lot.
Dumbest dumbest place to store people.
Yeah,
It's
right?
like, really, you think you're going to have a bunch of, like, we're told there's what, 25 people in the airport who have been replaced.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have 25 people sitting permanently in parked cars catatonically, and nobody is going to notice that. This is your perfect where they will never be found hiding place. Really?
Not even in the trunk of the car. They're sitting in the seats, like with the seat, like at the driver's seat, or no, they're even in the back seat. I think
Passenger
some of them
seat.
were.
They're
Yeah.
waiting for their chauffeur to show up and drive them home. I mean,
Yeah, it's just it's a terrible idea. These are the smartest people in the universe.
well, now let's go back to, they did say that eventually they don't need the duplicates. They don't need the originals.
Right. They did say that.
But we don't know how
but-
long that takes. We don't know how long the connection is. We don't know any of that. So I don't know. I guess the assumption is by the time people actually found the originals, they're already going to be dead. So it's not going to matter.
I
well,
guess.
but apparently it takes longer than it takes to steal 50,000 young people
Right.
yeah.
Right.
going for vacation. But Meadows comes out here and the police do, and Sam and Jean
Yes.
save the
Yep.
day. So Sam and Jean for the win.
Yes. They attack. Meadows attacks Samantha. He's escaped, and so he attacks Samantha, and it's Jean. Yeah, and they save the day. Now the doctor's about to be processed. He's about to be duped, but he destroys the transfer unit, and they
He shorts it
before
out.
he shorts it out. So they have to send for a new one. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Was that something important?"
He basically just sticks a paper clip in what looks like a headphone jack or something like that and shorts it out.
Yes. So Gatwick is calling, but at this point, the director refuses to listen to them anymore because he doesn't think they have the originals. So the Commandant has to demonstrate that they have the originals by detaching the original Jenkins from the device, and that turns duplicate Jenkins into a puddle. And that really ups the ante on board the spaceship.
Yeah. Blade turns on the director at this point because he realizes I really am next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he uses pulls his ray gun out, takes charge, contacts Gatwick. The Commandant, meanwhile, demands to talk to the doctor or he'll kill the Blade dupe. I mean, so the Commandant's really like, he's like, again, really on board now. The director, meanwhile, tries to say that the miniaturization can't be reversed, but Blade comes out and says he's lying. We can do it.
Yeah.
And the doctor offers to let the alien dupes live, but they have to return to the original state. They can't keep their people. They're the originals. Blade ends up shooting the duplicate director and Jamie.
The duplicate Jamie.
The duplicate Jamie, that's right, sorry. And agrees to the doctor's terms. They then find Jamie and Crossland in a cabinet, just sitting in there.
I like how the doctor tells the real Jamie about Blade. He's a friend now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Then they have to take all these 50,000 young people. They're going to have to, I assume they're deminiaturized on board the alien ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they said the plane was part of the
Yeah.
process.
As
So
we saw
it's going to
back.
take a long time to move 50,000 people through these planes back to Earth. Like, it's going to be days to do this. I was thinking about myself, just like, because a plane can't carry that many people. So, and then the doctor does offer to help the aliens figure out a solution to their original problem of facelessness, which I presume means teach them about plastic surgery.
Yeah.
And then back on Earth, the
Oh, no,
Commandant.
I want to hear about what's happening on Earth.
Yes,
Yeah.
on Earth, Mork is now talking to the big head. Sorry, that's a nice flashback about 40 years.
That's
So
to two different things, both Mork and Mindy and Quark. Which,
was yes,
or, I don't know,
Third Rock.
from the
Third
sun.
Rock.
Third Rock from
Yes.
the sun had the big giant head that we didn't see except in the form of William Shatner. But in Quark, there was a big giant head that we got to see.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I forgot the one in Third Rock. Yes, but yeah, the big giant head from Mork and Mindy. If you haven't seen it, kids, go. That's another old show you should watch. We're not doing a Secrets of Mork and Mindy. So
Oh,
it's-
Shazbot.
Shazbot. So back on Earth, the Commandant orders the TARDIS return to the Doctor. Jamie says goodbye to Samantha. And Ben and Polly.
Samantha kisses Jamie.
Yes. She's like, if you're ever back around town, look me up. And then Ben and Polly are back, and they at this point realize they're back in London, and it's literally the day they left with the first Doctor.
Yep.
And they want to stay. They're kind of done traveling, which is the Doctor's reaction is interesting. Later on, the Doctors will become sort of like, "Oh, fine, you want to leave me?" They all leave. This one, the Doctor's like, "Oh, that's sad, but okay, I understand. If you're done."
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of sad that they're going, but it's not like, "Oh, I'm mad that you're going."
Yeah, it's not so much that they are sick of traveling. They're perfectly happy to go on until they realize, oh, this is the day we left.
Right.
We have the opportunity to pick up our lives right where we left off without problematic explanations of where have you been for the last 6 years.
Yes.
Or having to stay in hiding for 6 years until you catch up with your own, vanishing point. And so this is like the ideal opportunity. And given how shaky the TARDIS's navigation is at this point in the show's history, you want to take this opportunity when it comes around.
Yes.
Right. The train is pulled into the right station at the right time. This is the time to get out.
Yeah, exactly.
So they say goodbye, and it ends with the Doctor and Jamie going to look for the TARDIS that has been returned to them. And this is where the beginning of the Evil of the Daleks is, where they're now chasing after the Leatherman whatever truck that's carrying the TARDIS away. So
Lorry.
Lorry.
Yes.
That's carrying the TARDIS off. So that's where this ends. It goes right into the beginning of the Evil of the Daleks. So and that's where we go.
Yeah, and this is a much better Doctor Who episode set in an airport than we'll see for a long time, because we've got the horrors of time flight coming up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are there any other airport-based Doctor Who episodes that are actually worth watching?
Well, are there other airport-based ones besides Time Flight?
Flight. They visit airports, but as far as I remember, I could be wrong, but as far as I remember, the Faceless Ones and Time Flight are the only ones actually set in an airport.
Yep. Oh, okay.
And Time Flight is really going to be hard.
And coincidentally, they are going to appear in proximity in our watching of it, so that's interesting.
I've mentioned periodically Sycorax Rocks.
Yep.
The guy who makes videos about the Doctors. And in his 13 Songs for 13 Doctors video about the 5th Doctor, Peter Davison, he's doing Total Eclipse of the Celery Heart. And he's kind of walking through the 5th Doctor's timeline, and when he gets to this right slot for Time Flight, you just hear these background voices say, "OMG, Time Flight."
So, Father Cory, any last notes on this episode?
No, other than this was an enjoyable one. This is one I'm glad they restored, because it was a lot of fun.
Yep. Jimmy?
Nope, that's about it. Although I would note that one difference between this and Time Flight is this is Gatwick and that's Heathrow. Mm-hmm. Yep, so maybe that's part of the problem.
It's got to be Gatwick to be good. All right. So let's take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Doctor Who, including Aiden H., Christopher D., Kip C., Stephen C., and Mark B. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. So that's it from us. What did you think of The Faceless Ones? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time, and we'll be discussing the first part of the season-ending 11th Doctor two-parter, The Pandorica Opens. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest, and remember...